It was a cold Monday morning when a group of high school students walked into class and noticed something strange. Their regular teacher, Mrs. Adams, wasn't there. Instead, a substitute stood at the front of the room. He was tall, pale, and had this unsettling grin that never seemed to fade. Nobody thought much of it at first. After all, subs show up all the time. But within the first 10 minutes, something felt off. He introduced himself as Mr. Gray. His voice was calm, but there was something hollow in the way he spoke, like he was repeating lines he had memorized. The students quickly realized that Mr. Gray didn't follow the lesson plan. Instead of opening the math textbook, he asked the students strange personal questions. What's your favorite place to be alone? Do you ever feel like someone's watching you? Nervous laughter filled the room, but unease settled deep in their stomachs. By the middle of the class, he walked over to the door and locked it. The loud click of the lock silenced everyone. He turned slowly to face the class, his grin wider than before, and said, "We don't want anyone interrupting us, do we?" No one moved. No one spoke. The students just sat there, frozen in their chairs, pretending everything was normal. One brave student, Sarah, raised her hand and asked to go to the nurse. Mr. Gray tilted his head, almost like he didn't understand the question. Then he replied, "No one leaves until I say so." His voice dropped an octave, and for the first time, it didn't sound human. It was deeper, almost guttural. The students exchanged terrified glances. Some whispered that they should text the office. But before anyone could act, Mr. Gray began pacing the classroom. He didn't teach. He didn't sit. He just walked slowly between the rows, stopping to stand behind students and stare at the back of their heads. His cold breath brushed against their necks, and every second felt like an eternity. Finally, the bell rang. The sound was a lifeline. Students jumped from their seats, rushing for the door, only to realize it was still locked. Mr. Gray stood there, blocking the way, his grin stretched unnaturally wide. Then, just like that, he stepped aside, unlocked the door, and said, "See you tomorrow." His tone was cheerful, almost mocking. The students bolted out of the classroom, their hearts racing. They went straight to the office to report what happened. But when the principal checked the system, confusion spread. There was no record of a substitute scheduled that day. In fact, Mrs. Adams had called in sick, but no one had been assigned to cover her class. When staff returned to the room, the desk was empty. No trace of Mr. Gray, no name on the sign-in sheet. No one had seen him enter or leave the building. And to this day, the students still wonder who or what was standing at the front of their classroom. Detention always felt endless, but on this particular Friday, something was different. The school hallways were unusually silent. The janitors had already started shutting off lights, leaving sections of the building in eerie darkness. A handful of students sat in detention, their pencils scratching against paper. But then faintly they heard it, someone talking. At first, they thought it was just another teacher finishing up their work. But the voice wasn't calm. It carried a strange intensity, a hushed but frantic tone, like someone speaking to a crowded room. The sound came from down the hall, the classroom belonging to Mr. Howard, the history teacher. The detention supervisor had stepped out for a moment, so curiosity got the best of them. Two students crept into the hallway and followed the voice. As they got closer, they realized the classroom was completely dark. Only the faint orange glow of the streetlights outside cut through the windows. They peeked in. What they saw made their stomachs twist. Mr. Howard stood at the front of his classroom. His posture was rigid, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the rows of empty chairs. And yet, he was teaching. His voice rose and fell as if he was lecturing to a full class. His hands gestured toward the chalkboard, drawing invisible timelines, recounting events to no one. The students exchanged terrified glances. This wasn't some quiet review session. This was full-on teaching to an audience that didn't exist. Then it got worse. Mr. Howard laughed, a deep hollow laugh that echoed through the room. He pointed at an empty chair near the front and said, "That's incorrect. Try again." His tone was sharp, as if scolding a student. But the seat was empty. The students backed away slowly, but the floor creaked under their shoes. Mr. Howard's head snapped toward the door. For a split second, his eyes caught theirs. His expression was blank, no recognition, no humanity. Just an empty stare that froze them in place. Then, without a word, he turned back to the room and kept teaching. His voice lowered to a whisper, almost like a chant. The air in the hallway felt heavier, colder, like it was pressing down on their chests. Terrified, the students bolted back to detention. When the supervisor returned, they begged him to check the classroom. Together, they went back, but the room was empty. No lights, no sound, no Mr. Howard. His briefcase was gone. His car wasn't in the lot. It was as if he had never been there at all. The next morning, the students told the principal. But when Mr. Howard was asked about it, his response chilled them to the bone. He calmly denied being in the school after hours. He said he went home right after the last bell. His face showed no emotion, no guilt, just a cold, blank expression. To this day, those students swear they saw him, teaching to a classroom full of ghosts. Every school has that one teacher everyone respects but secretly feels uneasy around. For Westwood High, that teacher was Mr. Daniels, the history teacher. He was brilliant, passionate, and intense. But whenever he taught about tragic events, wars, disasters, or deaths, the classroom itself seemed to change. It started with the lights. They would flicker the moment he began recounting something dark. At first, the students laughed it off, calling it bad wiring, but it happened too often, and only in his classroom. One afternoon, he was covering the story of the Great Depression. As he spoke about families starving, several students swore they heard faint whispers in the room, not from each other, but from the walls. One girl raised her hand and asked if he heard it too. Mr. Daniels paused, his eyes narrowing before saying softly, "Stay focused on me. Don't listen to them." The class fell silent. Over the next few weeks, the disturbances grew worse. Shadows appeared in the corners of the room, stretching unnaturally tall even when no one was moving. Students claimed they saw faces in the windows, even though the classroom was on the second floor. The temperature would drop so suddenly that their breath became visible, even in the middle of spring. But the worst was during his lecture on World War II, as Mr. Daniels described the horrors of concentration camps. The fluorescent lights burst, leaving the class in near darkness. Panic spread, but his voice never wavered. He kept speaking, his tone low, steady, almost like he was reciting a memory instead of a lesson. Students said they saw silhouettes moving behind him, figures of soldiers, prisoners, and screaming civilians. When the lights finally came back, Mr. Daniels was pale and sweating, gripping the edge of his desk so hard his knuckles were white. He dismissed class early, his voice shaking. Rumors spread fast. Some students said his brother had died years ago in the very same building, when it was still an old middle school. Others whispered that he had been seen talking to himself late at night, holding conversations with people no one else could see. One student, curious and brave, decided to ask him directly. After class, she approached and asked, "Why does this always happen when you teach about death?" Mr. Daniels froze. His eyes glistened, almost like tears were about to fall. Then he whispered, "Because the dead are listening." That student never stayed after class again. By the end of the year, things had gotten so bad that parents complained. The school replaced the fluorescent bulbs, checked the wiring, even brought in maintenance crews, but nothing stopped it. And strangely, the disturbances only grew stronger when outsiders tried to investigate. Eventually, Mr. Daniels left the school without explanation. No goodbye, no farewell. His classroom sits empty now, used only for storage. But some nights, when janitors walk past the door, they swear they hear it, his voice, calmly lecturing to the dead. Not every horror story happens inside a school. Sometimes it follows you home. Jason, a junior in high school, was struggling with math. His teacher, Miss Whitmore, offered to help. She was quiet, polite, and always kept to herself. When she suggested private tutoring at her house, Jason's parents agreed. They trusted her. After all, she was a teacher. The following Saturday, Jason walked to her address, a small, aging house on the edge of town. From the outside, it looked ordinary. The paint was chipped, the yard overgrown, but nothing screamed danger. He knocked. No answer. He tried again, and the door creaked open on its own. Inside, the air was cold, unnaturally cold for summer. The house was almost empty. No TV, no furniture, no warmth. Just bare walls and a strange, musty smell. On a small table in the living room sat a single lamp and a stack of old papers. "Hello?" Jason called out. His voice echoed. No response. As he stepped further inside, he noticed something that made his skin crawl. Family photos lined the hallway walls, but every single one had the faces scratched out. Men, women, children, all of them violently gouged away with something sharp. Only the outlines of their bodies remained. Jason's stomach dropped. He told himself maybe it was some weird art project, maybe a joke. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. Then came the sound. Scratching. Slow, deliberate scratching from upstairs. Like nails dragging across wood. His breath quickened. He whispered, "Ms. Whitmore?" No answer, just the scratching, louder this time, followed by a faint thud. Fear surged through him, and Jason backed toward the front door. But before he could leave, the door slammed shut on its own. He froze, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. The scratching turned into footsteps, slow, heavy, descending the stairs. Jason didn't wait. He bolted through the kitchen, searching for another way out. He found a back door and yanked it open, stumbling into the yard. He didn't stop running until he was blocks away. When he finally made it home, he told his parents everything. They called the school to report what happened. But here's the thing, Ms. Whitmore didn't live there. In fact, she didn't live anywhere near that house. Confused, Jason's father drove back to check for himself. But when he arrived, the house looked abandoned. Windows boarded up, door chained shut, dust covering the porch like no one had been inside for years. When Jason confronted Ms. Whitmore at school the following Monday, she looked at him strangely and said, "I never invited you to my home." Her voice was steady, her expression blank. Jason never spoke to her again. And to this day, he avoids that street entirely. Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't a haunted school. It's realizing your teacher may not be who or what you think they are. Some discoveries are too terrifying to forget. It was a normal afternoon at Ridgeway High when a group of students stumbled onto something that would haunt them forever. Their English teacher, Mr. Collins, had stepped out of the classroom, leaving his desk drawer slightly open, out of boredom and curiosity. One student pulled it open further and found a thick leather-bound journal. At first they thought it was just a planner or notes, but the first page told a different story. In shaky handwriting, Mr. Collins had written the words, "I can't stop the thoughts anymore." The students exchanged uneasy looks but kept reading. Page after page was filled with disturbing entries. He had written about his students by name, not about their grades or behavior, but about their fears, their weaknesses, and worse, their deaths. One entry described a boy named Ryan falling down the stairs and breaking his neck. Another detailed a girl named Emily being locked inside the bathroom, scratching at the door until her hands bled. Each page was darker than the last, describing accidents that hadn't even happened yet. The students wanted to stop, but curiosity pulled them deeper. Then they froze, because one of the most recent entries described that very afternoon. It listed their names. It said they would be caught snooping where they don't belong. The entry ended with 3 words that made their blood run cold. They won't leave. Just then the classroom door creaked open. Mr. Collins stepped inside. His eyes immediately landed on the journal in their hands. His face drained of color, but his expression quickly hardened into something unreadable. "What are you doing?" he asked quietly. Too quietly. The students panicked. They shoved the journal back into the drawer and muttered excuses. But Mr. Collins only stared. His eyes followed them like a predator watching prey. Finally, he said, "Go back to your seats." His voice was calm, but his knuckles were white as he gripped the edge of the desk. No one spoke for the rest of class. After school, they went straight to the principal and reported everything. But when the drawer was checked, the journal was gone. Every desk was emptied, every drawer inspected, nothing. The principal called Mr. Collins in, but he denied everything. Smiling, he said they must have been imagining it. He even offered for the office to search his bag, completely empty, except for lesson plans. The students left shaken, but they knew what they saw. And over the next month, their fear grew, because every accident in the journal began to come true. Ryan fell on the stairs and fractured his arm. Emily was found trapped in the bathroom for nearly an hour after the lock jammed. The students who found the journal never spoke of it again, but they avoided Mr. Collins at all costs. His smile always seemed to say, "I know what you read." And to this day, no one knows where that journal went, or if he's still writing in it. It was late one evening when 3 friends, Anna, Derek, and Luis, were walking home from basketball practice. The streets were quiet, the air heavy with that uneasy silence small towns get after dark. They joked to shake off the tension, but halfway down Maple Road they froze, because standing in the middle of the street was their teacher, Mr. Carter. He wasn't moving, wasn't waving, wasn't even acknowledging them. He just stood perfectly still, facing them under the glow of a flickering streetlight. His expression was wrong. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and his lips curled into an unnatural grin that stretched far too wide. At first, the kids thought maybe he was joking, maybe he had been out for a walk. But when Anna called out, "Mr. Carter?" he didn't respond. He just tilted his head slowly, as if studying them like prey. The streetlight buzzed, then flickered. For a split second, his shadow seemed to stretch across the entire road. Derek whispered, "Something's not right. Let's go." But before they could move, Mr. Carter took a step forward. His shoes scraped against the asphalt, slow and deliberate. Then another step, and another. His grin never wavered. The kids backed away, their breaths quickening. But every time they moved, he matched their pace. It wasn't fast, it was worse. It was slow, purposeful, like he had all the time in the world. Finally, Luis shouted, "Stop messing with us!" His voice cracked. That's when it happened. Mr. Carter's mouth opened wider than humanly possible, stretching into a grotesque, jagged smile. And from the darkness of his throat came a sound, low, guttural, like something growling from another world. The sound didn't belong in the body of a man. The kids bolted, sprinting down the street without looking back. Their footsteps thundered against the pavement, lungs burning, hearts racing. And yet, they could still hear the scrape of his shoes behind them. Not running, not rushing, just walking slowly, as if no matter how far they ran, he would always be there. When they finally reached Anna's house, they slammed the door shut and peered through the window. The street was empty, no sign of him. No sound, nothing. The next morning, they told their classmates what happened. But here's where it gets terrifying. When attendance was called, Mr. Carter's name was marked absent. The principal announced he hadn't shown up for work. In fact, he never came back. His house was empty, his car still in the driveway, but he was gone. The kids never saw him again. But sometimes when they walk home late at night, they swear they feel it, the sensation of being watched. And when they pass under the streetlight on Maple Road, they remember that grin. That impossible, haunting grin. Because maybe Mr. Carter didn't disappear at all. Maybe he's still out there, waiting for them. If you enjoy true scary stories, hit that subscribe button and join our horror family. More disturbing stories are coming. Don't miss the next nightmare.